What's up, everybody? Justin Freeman here from RunTheSims.com, and today we are going to be talking about our handy dandy optimizer. That is the classic optimizer, classic format DFS: one quarterback, two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a defense. And we are going to try to make the best possible lineups with some pretty cool tools at our disposal. So, without any further ado, why don't we hop right on in and show you guys the lay of the land here. The optimizer is currently set up to support three different platforms, okay? DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. There are some more fringe DFS sites out there. Maybe we'll get to those eventually, but as of right now, those are the three that we're supporting. And as you can click right there, you can click on either one of those that you want. You click on DraftKings, for example, and then you can click on whichever slate it is that you're interested in. And really, there's only one slate for us to choose from right here. The Sunday main slate, it's posted. We're recording this about a month before week one, so we will see some unusual numbers being this far out from the regular season, but we can definitely get into the tool and exactly how it works. And so by selecting a slate, what we've done is we've created a player pool down here. That is every player that is eligible to go into a DraftKings lineup. In other words, this is a 13-game slate, as you can see right here, and here are the 13 games that are in that slate. So we're not getting all 16 games for the week. We're not getting the Thursday game. We're not getting the Sunday night game. We're not getting the Monday night game. We're just getting the 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games for the week. And you can choose whichever slate it is that you're interested in. And as we've got our player pool here, we've got some unique ways that we can search for particular players. We can limit based on position. So I clicked on quarterback right there, and we've got just the quarterbacks popping up there. I can unclick on them and get the entire player pool back up. You can click on defense, for example. You can also search for a player, and keep in mind this is case sensitive. So if I wanted to search for Aaron Rodgers, I could start typing in Aaron, and there's Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones both popping up. But basically, this tool here is set up so that you can get a lot of really important information and then also create awesome lineups. So there is a ton of information here in the player pool. Trying to figure out exactly what is super significant for you may be different depending on what your goals are in terms of how you're playing different contests. So let's talk a little bit about the player pool here and some of the different columns. First and foremost, you'll see your pretty standard demographic information: position, name, salary, team, opponent. That should all be pretty second nature for you at this point. Then you have our base projection here. And so a base projection for us is what we call a mean projection or a tournament projection. This is going to skew a little bit higher than the median. So going back to high school math class, there is a difference between median and mean. Mean means average, right? And so average is going to tend to skew a little bit high when there are high-end outliers. You think about Patrick Mahomes might tend to score 23 fantasy points, but occasionally he'll score 40, and that'll really skew the average, right? But it doesn't necessarily affect the median too much. So some places do median, some do mean. This is a mean projection. And then as we go across here, there's lots of other different pieces of information for us. This area right here, points per dollar, that's a sort of a salary-based value indicator. It essentially divides the number of fantasy points by the salary here and spits that out in the form of a decimal, okay? So if we were to sort here, we can get a sense of who are the best essentially point per dollar plays. And in this situation, we have Trey Lance projected as a starter for week one, which may or may not happen. It is a month away from the season right now. But if he were, he looks like a pretty good bargain at his $4,500 salary right now. Next, we have some stuff related to ownership and our simulations. So projected ownership here, obviously that's all zeros right this second. And all of the things up here in the header are fully sortable as well. So you can click on projected ownership there. And as soon as we get information from our data provider on projected ownership, that'll filter in there. And essentially a projected ownership is going to tell you what percent of the field do we expect to have that person in their lineup in large field tournaments. So for example, the Millie Maker, how many lineups are going to contain in this situation, let's just say Javonte Williams. That number would tell you that right there. But this is a really cool number here, our optimal rate. So what we have done is simulated every play of every game 10,000 times and then optimized each simulation to tell you exactly how often a player pops up in the optimal lineup. So in this situation, Alvin Kamara actually pops up as the best running back in a lineup 21.5% of the time. He's in the winning lineup 21.5% of the time. So imagine a situation where Alvin Kamara is only going to be 10% owned in a large field tournament. Well, we've now got a leverage point. We've actually know that we're going to be overweight on the field in that situation. And that's what this column here will tell us, optimal leverage. Optimal leverage is a really simple calculation. It's just the optimal rate minus the projected ownership. So positive numbers are good, negative numbers not so good. Next, let's look at our boom rate and our bust rate. A boom rate is telling us how often a player hits a number that we find significant here at Run the Sims. We know that different positions require different sort of salary achievement thresholds to be considered a boom. And so in this situation, we get a really good grade on Trey Lance if he were to be the starter. But let's look at some different positions. For example, running back. Even though Christian McCaffrey is $9,500, he booms on his salary 44.6% of the time. And bust rate, that's going to tell us exactly how often they fail to reach a certain criteria, which I believe is 2x on the salary, if I recall correctly. And you see there are some guys here that are going to bust pretty routinely based on what we currently know. Next, let's look at floor, median, 75th percentile, and ceiling projections. These are different ranges of outcomes. So we run all these simulations so that you can essentially choose your projection source here. So let's say we obviously have our base projections in over here. And let's just say that, for example, we wanted to optimize based on 75th percentile outcomes. We could just click the double arrow right here. And now our projection field in this column here is now loaded with the 75th percentile of every player. And that's coming directly from our simulations. And the ceiling projections here are actually 90th percentile. We don't use 100th percentile because those get really, really wonky. But if you wanted to optimize for ceiling, you could throw that in there as well. So pretty cool ways that you can optimize your lineups. And of course, what is the goal of optimizing lineups? Is to get really good lineups. And so you can obviously do a lot of things in order to get some really good lineups. Let's start by looking at the settings next. So settings is going to let you choose. We currently have as few as 1 and as many as 300 lineups that you can choose from. Okay. And then next, you can choose the number of unique players you want in each lineup. It goes from 1 to 5. Okay. So if you're going to create, let's just say 10 lineups, you don't want to have just like the same 8 players in every lineup with like a different defense, for example. So you'd want to make sure you have at least 2 unique players in each lineup. That'd be a good rule of thumb there. Next is max exposure. This is going to let you essentially set a global filter on all your players to say, I want no more than X% of anybody. So I don't care that Patrick Mahomes is a fantastic play this week. I don't want more than 40% of him. I don't want more than 40% of anybody. Of course, you can also set that to 100% and let the optimizer do the work. Next, you can set max players per team. So if you're playing a tournament lineup, it may make sense to allow some room for stacking. However, if you're playing cash, you may want to make sure you have no more than 1 or 2 players from any given team so that you're not super overexposed in that situation. And then you can also control your salary ranges here. So if you want to make sure that you're not getting any kind of wonky lineups that are super under budget, you can obviously change those right here as well. Lastly, you can change which positions you want to allow in your flex spot. So a lot of times the optimizer will love to throw in tight ends because tight ends are great values, but we know playing double tight end lineups, in other words, that's 1 tight end in the tight end position and a tight end in the flex spot, can be a little bit of a risky situation as well because tight ends can be so touchdown dependent. So maybe you want to eliminate tight ends from your player pool, and you can do that there. But essentially you can click generate lineups on any screen here, and you'll get the number of lineups that you requested. So let's just say we want to request, let's call it 40 lineups, right? So we can do that there. We click generate lineups. Takes just a second, and then there we go. So now I've got 40 lineups based upon the specifications that I've laid out there. In my settings, you see that I set the max exposure to 100%. That allowed as many a player to hop in that lineup as many times as was necessary. And you see that we got up to 55% of Chargers defense there. So that might be a good reason we want to go in and modify how much of each player that we're having in our lineups. And so you're seeing a lot of high-end outcomes totaling 238 points. Well, that's because we used ceiling projections. So keep that in mind as we are building as well. But you can obviously go back into your player pool. We can rerun lineups a lot of different types of ways. Obviously, you see we have min and max salary exposures. You can lock a player in. So if I click the lock button, he'll be in every single lineup. I can also click the exclude button. That gets him out of the player pool completely. If you ever want to bring him back, just unclick this hide excluded players button, and there he is. He's red. You can bring him back. Just unclick the button there. And so Patrick Mahomes is now back in the lineup where he's supposed to be. Of course, if I hit the lock button there and generate lineups, I should be seeing 100% of Patrick Mahomes in the quarterback spot. So now I've locked in Patrick Mahomes to every roster. We're good to go there. Next, let's look at our stacks, okay? So there's a lot of different ways to get to stacks. You can click on the stacks tab and then go to any game it is that you choose, or you can navigate to it from the player pool. Underneath every game is a little stack logo. So let's just say we were really interested, and let me unlock Patrick Mahomes before I go any further. Let's just say we were really interested in stacking up Russell Wilson here in this game. We thought he was in a really good spot against Indy. Maybe they had some defensive injuries, and we really wanted to take advantage of that. So what we do there is click on the stack button. We now have the Seattle Seahawks and the Indianapolis Colts. We want to stack this Seattle side. We want to stack Russell Wilson with, let's just say, 2 wide receivers. And we want to bring back somebody from the Colts, because we know if the Seahawks are going to score a ton of points, then maybe the Colts are going to have to play catch up. So we'll also allow 1 player from any position here. So this wide receiver, tight end, running back, that means give me anybody from the Colts that's any of those positions. So this should give me stacks that include Russell Wilson at quarterback, 2 wide receivers from the Seahawks, plus any 1 player from offense for the Colts. So I'll click find stacks there, and we'll get the best possible stacks here on this page. And we've got up to 20 pages worth of data here. And the best one, in terms of raw points here, is going to be this one right here, pretty much as expected. Russ Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jonathan Taylor. And so if I do want to force in some stacks, I can force in up to 100% exposure for that one particular stack. Or I can sort of water it down a little bit. Like maybe I don't want to go all in on this Seahawks stack. Maybe I just want half of it. So now I've got 50% of my exposure will be this Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jonathan Taylor stack. So now I can click generate lineups again, and I should be seeing that in exactly half of my lineups. And so here I am, I get there, I've got, obviously there it is, 50% of all those guys, and they're all popping up there together. I'm also getting some unrelated, lineups that don't include that stack, obviously, but just going down here, now we're getting into our Russell Wilson lineups, and you can see them right there operating as expected. We've got Russ, Metcalf, Lockett, and then Jonathan Taylor as our bring back. So we're getting some really good lineups. We're doing it using some of our simulated data. We're using our 90th percentile outcomes that are in our projections now. So whatever's in this sort of text box right here is the number that we are optimizing for. You can play with your stacks. You can play with your lock button. You can exclude players. You can obviously do anything here in the settings area, and your results will be right here. And keep in mind, you will lose your results currently after you leave the screen or you run another set of lineups. So if you do like the lineups, make sure you click download, and you'll get that download button there in the bottom of your screen. It should go into your downloads folder. And then you'll have a lineup there that basically lets you essentially get to use this information to your advantage. So here we are. We've got the lineup that will go directly into our DraftKings player pool here. So we would just go ahead and copy all those directly into our DraftKings CSV, and they'll upload directly to the site there. So that's pretty much it for the optimizer. We'll do a lot more shows throughout the season, including how to sort of do tips and tricks here to get the types of lineups it is that you're looking for. But overall, hope you'll find it to be a pretty powerful tool. It does our classic slates right now. For Showdown, we'll be talking about our simulator, which will be coming up next. Hope you guys will tune into that. Hope you find this helpful. If I can help you in any way, my DMs on Twitter are always open. You can find me at JustinFreeman18. We'll talk to you guys next time.